I'm back to read a little bit more of your story. Today we're going to start reading on June 23rd, 1863. We are reading My Brother's Keeper. It's Virginia's Civil War diary. We just read the first part of it yesterday, and Virginia, in case you weren't with us for that part, she's writing a journal just like Joshua did, and she is writing for her brother. She lives in Gettysburg, which was a big part of the Civil War. So let's see what happens today. June 23rd, 1863. On the way to the store this morning, Mrs. Macaulay and I saw a number of Negro people hurrying down Baltimore Street. They all carried big bundles on their backs. The person leading the way was Becky Lee, the nice lady who helps Mrs. Macaulay with her wash. Mrs. Macaulay shouted to Becky Lee, asking where she was going. Becky Lee said the Rebs were coming. She said she was going to hide her children in the woods near Culp's Hill. Mrs. Macaulay told her to come stay with us, but Becky Lee said no house in Gettysburg was safe. She said the Rebs will search all the houses for Negroes and drag them south to be slaves. Mrs. Macaulay opened her handbag and gave Becky Lee all her money. She told Becky Lee she would pray for her and her children. What a terrible thing for people to be slaves. God created all people equal, but slavery treats some people like animals. Why, Becky Lee has to hide her children just like Uncle Jack has to hide his horses. Mrs. Macaulay says if the Union wins the war, President Lincoln's wish will come true. There will be no more slavery in any states. But she says the Union is not doing well. The Confederates have won many battles. If they win a big battle in Pennsylvania, she thinks they might win the whole war. Later, my friends Sally and Betsy are leaving town too. Their families are taking the last train out of Gettysburg in the morning. They will stay in New York until the rebels have come and gone. Many people are leaving town, but Mrs. Macaulay says we will not leave. She fears that if we leave, the Rebs might rob the house. The Rebs only rob empty houses, she says. Then what about our empty house? Mine, Jed's, Paul's. It is sitting all by itself across town with no one at all to guard it. Uncle Jack's horses are important, but so is Paul's violin and Mother's gold locket and pearl-handled hairbrush. What if the Rebs steal Jed's books, his plays by William Shakespeare and the death of King Arthur? June 24th, 1863. Mr. Houk came to dinner again today. He said that right now the Rebs are spreading over the countryside just outside town. He said it is now dangerous for ordinary citizens to travel to and from Gettysburg. When I told Mr. Houk about Paul and Jed, he said they should stay at Uncle Jack's until all the Confederates have left this area. Oh yes, Jed should stay right where he is, Jane Ellen said with a look of great concern. What I would like to know is, why should Jane Ellen care so much about Jed's safety? Goodness, she hardly knows him. I imagine Paul must feel bad about leaving me here. He said the Rebs would never come near Gettysburg. He said he was leaving me in the safest place in the world, a sleepy little farm town, not big enough to attract a fly. How strange that I am the one in harm's way while Paul and Jed are safe at Uncle Jack's farm. What do I truly feel? Maybe I truly feel a tiny bit scared. Late afternoon, I am sitting on Cemetery Hill near my mother's grave. There is something I keep wondering. If my mother had lived, would she be on the side of the rebels now? My mother was born in Virginia. She loved the state of Virginia. Why, right before she died, she told Paul to name me Virginia. After my mother died, Paul lost touch with her family. But he once told me she had 2 younger brothers. What if they come to Gettysburg to fight our Union soldiers? Jed says this war has torn apart many families. He says President Lincoln is the only one who can make us one nation again. June 25th, 1863. I cannot stop thinking about my mother. Paul says my mother was a beautiful Southern belle. Paul always says this in a humble, shy way. It is as if he could not figure why a beautiful Southern belle would leave Virginia and move to the north with him. But that's easy to figure. Paul has bright, crinkly eyes and music in his heart. Whenever he plays his violin, everyone feels happy. why anyone would follow Paul when he plays his violin. I like to picture my mother in a flouncy pale dress, dancing barefoot to Paul's music. I can almost hear her tinkling laughter and see her dark curls. I think she will always be young and beautiful in Paul's mind. Whenever he speaks about her, he sounds like he's telling a fairy tale. If I told the Rebs such things about my mother, would they go away and leave our house alone? Late evening. I saved our treasures. I went to our house before nightfall. I lit a candle and put Jed's books in a satchel along with Paul's violin and my mother's pearl-handled hairbrush. I confess I am now wearing her gold locket. Paul would never let me wear it before, but surely it is better for me to wear my mother's locket than to have it stolen by the Rebs. Mrs. Macaulay praised my mission. She said Paul and Jed would be proud of me. Then she hid the satchel in the cellar. All evening, Jane Ellen kept asking, "Where is our army?" She wonders if President Lincoln himself even knows where our army is. If he does, why is he letting the Confederates ride around our countryside, doing as they please? I told Jane Ellen that President Lincoln is Jed's greatest hero in all the world. I told her that she mustn't speak ill of Mr. Lincoln when she is in my brother's presence. Do you know what she did then? She threw her hands across her heart and wailed, "I know! I love him desperately." Why, Jane Ellen, did you mean President Lincoln or my brother Jed? June 26, 1863. The rebels rode through Gettysburg this very day. At about 2 o'clock, we heard their yells. We heard whistles and drums. When we peeked outside, what a sight we saw. A rebel band was playing in the center square. Hundreds of Confederates were passing by our house. I could not look away, even when Jane Ellen urged me to close the shutters. First, the Rebs came on horses. Then they passed on foot. Some waved red flags, but they made a pitiful sight in their dirty gray uniforms. A man with his feet wrapped in rags called out "Howdy" to me. Another asked how many Yankee soldiers were in town. I shouted that it was none of his business. The Rebs laughed a wild laugh. He told me they were going to whip the Yankees no matter how many there were. Then he fired his pistol in the air and whooped. Jane Ellen slammed the shutters closed. Now it is raining hard. I am writing while Mrs. Macaulay and Jane Ellen bake bread. We can hear the Rebs firing their pistols in the square and yelling their rebel yells. If she were here right now, what would my mother feel? Her brothers could be part of that crowd. When I look at her picture in her locket, her tiny face seems sad. So tomorrow we'll have to wait and see what happens now that the Rebs are in town. Thanks for joining me today.